Greetings friends, welcome to this edition of Tales from the Tabletop, the video series where I delve into the deepest dungeons of the internet in my own personal experience to bring you fun anecdotes of adventure, from Warhammer to D&D and everything in between. And today is another very special episode. It's another Mörk Borg only episode. For those of you not familiar, this is a rules-light OSR role-playing game out of the Stockholm Cartel in Sweden. Mörk Borg stands for Dark Fortress. And this is easily my favorite role-playing game. For me personally, this beats D&D by a wide margin. That's just me, but maybe after hearing these stories, you'll want to give it a chance, and then who knows, maybe it'll be your favorite too. Our first story comes from somebody named Paddy Boomba. Cool name. Well done. Hats off, Paddy. My PCs encountered a troll on a bridge. The four of them worked together to confuse it. Finally, the gutter-born scum, which is a character class akin to a rogue, the gutter-born scum slid under its legs and drove a stone dagger deep into its rectum. They had to tie a rope to the hilt of the dagger and have a donkey pull so they could retrieve the knife and get away unscathed. Good fun. Our next story comes from KDX Prime, or Cadix Prime. I'm not completely certain. I had a PC die after being caught and hoisted by a giant angler spider. It wasn't the spider that killed them. It was getting stabbed twice by the cursed sword of the noble's ancestors, bludgeoned with an axe, set on fire, and then a 15-foot drop that finally killed them. All the result of what the rest of the group did to try and free him. The party did more damage than the damn spider. Stuff like that is why I love this. Next story comes from somebody named Roman Statuesque, which is interesting because I always thought of myself as being Phoenician Rubenesque. Funny. Art history puns? Anyone? No? I'm ashamed. Okay. Roman Statuesque writes, this story takes place in the Graves Left Wanting module, currently playing Mörk Borg as our backup game, Alien RPG being our primary game. Alien RPG is so much fun. If you've not tried it, for the love of heaven, try it. It's just the best. It is so stinking good. But I digress. I started the party off with Graves Left Wanting, and had them all wake up in a mass grave. A cult herbalist gets to work cooking up his concoctions and offers one to his new companions. The sacrilegious songbird, which is another character class from the same supplement, takes him up on the offer. The occult herb master made toad soup. Songbird spends the first 30 minutes of the session violently vomiting. They decide to head to the vomitorium first. Songbird finds a horn in the crypt and decides to blow it. Songbird vomits acid, melts the flesh of one of his hands off, and nearly dies. The herbalist would later give toad soup to the roach herder. Fast forward 2 sessions, and the party is joined by a pale one, covered with eyes, as they continue on their quest for their dark patron. This is the pale one, and the pale one's character class is described: you lurk on the settlement's fringes, observing, perhaps judging, but rarely interacting. You are fundamentally other and belong nowhere. You experience bouts of incoherent madness and self-destructive rages, but mostly you await the inevitable in solitary resignation. Randomly rolling on the feretory travel rules, the gang encounters a village of spider cultists. They try to sneak in, but roll poorly and get spotted. However, because the herbalist was using the spider climb potion, he was mistaken for a fellow believer, and the eye-covered pale one was mistaken for a chosen one of Loath, which I assume is their spider god. At this point, the pale one gets a wonderful idea. Why not get the village elder to give him his eyes? The elder, understandably, balks at the idea. That is, until the herbalist jumps on the table and starts shouting about how Loath has given him a vision and that the elder needs to give the pale one his eyes. He rolls well, so the elder proceeds to cut out his own eyes and hand them to the Pale One. Fast forward a little. The gang is shacked up in the village's stable and are debating about making a break for it before the villagers find out they're lying. The herbalist has another idea. Have the entire village sacrifice their eyes. So they make a racket and gather the whole village in front of the main hall, and the herbalist begins shouting from the roof about how Lolth is commanding them all to sacrifice their eyes. Understandably, this does not go over well with the villagers either. Even when the gang's gutter-born scum fakes cutting out his own eyes and handing them to the Pale One. And doubly so when the elder returns, now sporting 8 new arachnid eyes, and the vision that the gang is not who they say they are. Somehow, the herbalist manages to convince the crowd that the elder is a heretic and throws Hypo's unnerving snuff on the crowd, who begin to start cutting out their own eyes and throwing them to the Pale One in a frenzy. At which point, the villagers begin exploding. I describe how the villagers' skin begins to rot and peel away as new arachnid limbs erupt from their bodies. The party decides now would be a good time to make their exit. The villagers' eyes, which they collected, would later be sold to a witch in Galgenbeck for 40 silver, which in this game is quite a fortune. This last story is the one that I've been illustrating the whole time. I had a lot of fun illustrating this. I had a lot of fun reading this story. Strap in. I hope it's as fun for you. This next one is from Old Dirty 47, who says, I ran the Goblin Grinder, so mild spoilers ahead. But I got the funniest Mörk Borg death to tell you about. The Goblin Grinder is another module inside of the Ferritory Zine. Check it out, it's a lot of fun. It's essentially a dungeon delve, but in lieu of a dungeon, it is a tower. On the 3rd floor, there is a laboratory with what I described as a massive table filled with all of these bubbling potions, concoctions, ichor, and so on. If you bump the table during a fight, one of the vessels spills or breaks, and you must roll a d4 for a random effect. From memory, 1 is a potion that stinks so hard it stuns the player. 2 was acid that deals serious damage. A roll of 3 will heal you for a bit, and a roll of 4 will be a spilt potion. Spilling the potion has the same effect as casting a spell from an unclean scroll that targets the player directly. Fast forward to the 4th level and the final boss fight, where the Bastard, one of the NPCs, slammed one player named Krieg von Smelts with a battle axe, breaking him. In Mörk Borg, 0 hit points or less means the player is broken and must roll an effect on the small table called Broken Bodies. Krieg von Smelts rolled a hemorrhaging result. This means he will bleed out in an hour or so unless he does something, and all of his dice checks require a 16 or greater, even greater if he's rolling against goblins. So understandably, Krieg flees combat, limping down the stairs to the 3rd level laboratory. The player asks if there are any sweet, sweet healing potions. And I roll and say there's 1, but it's in the middle of the table. And you'll be needing an agility test to grab it without knocking anything over. Krieg rolls. And fails. Badly. He knocks over a potion and rolls a 4 on the random unclean power. And what unclean spell does he roll? A 10. For instant death. Krieg falls on the table, knocks over a beaker of black ooze. A skull of necrotic gas forms, opens its mouth and says, "Death!" I describe how all the color drains from him as he starts to rot and decay in seconds. This causes Krieg to lurch and knock the table over on himself, pouring all the various contents onto his chemically flayed, soon-to-be corpse, and his eyes pop, his skin melts, and his bones become exposed in classic Indiana Jones villain style. Some say that Krieg's death was so comically horrible that Necrobel, who if memory serves, is the god of death in this game, Necrobel laughed and chose this half-melted corpse to be his new agent of the apocalypse. Newly dubbed, Krieg von Smelts rises to perform his new grim duties. So yeah, don't mess around on the 3rd floor of the Goblin Grinder. 10 out of 10, game and module. Would kill my PCs here any day. And that's the last one for this one. I love the dark humor. I love that I love the over-the-topness, the over-the-top death. It's like you're not just slain by some monster. You are melted, and your eyes pop out of your sockets, and geyser of blood. So much fun. And this is a taste of what makes the game so fun for me. The humor, the cheapness of the players' lives. They have a fighting chance, but only just. And when they die, the deaths are comical and brutal and grim. It's like something out of an episode of Metalocalypse. It's just so much fun for me. The illustration for this one I had to think about for a second, because the first thought would be to draw a dude with his face melting off. But then I think, I heard an art teacher that I really respect. This he does concept art for big movies in Hollywood, or he did. And he had this phrase that was violence perceived is violence achieved. You don't show, if it's a still image, you do not have the monster already killing somebody. You have the monster about to kill somebody. So in the spirit of that, I figured I would draw the moment of anticipation, the moment where Krieg von Smelts is about to roll dice. So he's all bloodied up, he's actively dying, and he's got to just get the potion. So that was my idea. I thought it would be more powerful to have the moment just before the catastrophe. That being said, I really should have just drawn a guy's face melting off. How awesome would that be? A smoky skull that says death and a dude's face just melting off. And it would have been a lot of fun, but at the same time, it would have been super fun to draw. It would make excellent clickbait on a video thumbnail. But I wanted to stretch myself, give myself something harder to work on. And this is a composition that I don't usually use, just the lower camera, the foreshortening of the hand. I focus on hands and faces, and I want my characters up front and personal. I want my spotlight on my characters because they're the most fun to draw, and that's where most of the expression lives for me personally. So to put all of the stuff on the table into the foreground and render it with any kind of detail, that was going to be a stretch. That was something that I would need to work on. It was so much of a stretch that I had to get reference for this material, and so here's a little video that I took of myself trying to get some reference. I do it from video because I can make different poses, go back through the video, screen grab the moments that I think would make the best drawing. And I use that as reference, not to copy, but to refer. And what I came up with was this result. And I'm not going to lie to you, this took days. This took like 2.5 days solid of working on it, because there's just so much stuff, and for reasons that I cannot begin to explain, I just became enamored with cross-hatching sometime in the recent past, and so there's just hatching all over this sucker, and not gonna lie, I appreciate the result. I think the results are good. I did include the red for color because red is, both the bleeding guy and red is traditionally the color of healing potions. I like to imagine that healing potions taste like Hawaiian Punch. And that was, I put the healing potion and the hand and the face all dead center as much as I could, so that would be clearly the focal point. But I wanted my focal point to pop a little bit more because it's a very busy image. There's a lot of things going on. There's not a whole lot of clear silhouettes. So just a little dab of color, just a little bit of red to shoot your eyes to exactly where I want you to see, and to put the character into a much more stark focus, as opposed to just another pile of lines and hatching in a series of piles of lines and hatching. If you'd like the original art from this episode, it'll be for sale on my website, coffeeandhate.biz. Click store at the top. Well, that's it for this time of Tales from the Tabletop. Thank you so much for watching, thank you for listening, and may your dice roll high and never get cursed.